In this tutorial, I'll be demonstrating how you can create these 6 icon designs using nothing but basic shapes in Inkscape. Before we get started though, if you want to learn more about how Inkscape works, be sure to check out my Inkscape Masterclass. It's a collection of over 80 videos where we go over all of the tools and features in Inkscape and I explain what they are and demonstrate how they work. We even have a private community where you can ask questions and get help from me anytime you want. So the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is how to draw a heart. So let me grab the squares and rectangles tool. I'll click and drag on the canvas to draw a vertically elongated rectangle. And then I'll grab my selection tool and I want to make sure I have this lock icon turned off up here in the toolbar. And for the width, I want the width to be 100 pixels and I want the height to be 225 pixels. And then I'm going to zoom in on this object. I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool and I'm going to grab this circular knot right here and bring this all the way down so that we have rounded edges like that. Then I'll grab my selection tool. I'll right click the object and go to duplicate. I will rotate it 90 degrees. Select both objects. Click on them to get the rotation handles and then hold your control key and grab the rotation handle in the corner here and rotate it around until it's upright like that, where it sort of looks like an X. And now you can go into your shape builder tool, make sure you have the addition option enabled, and click and drag to draw a line going through the area of the shapes to draw a heart. Now you can go back to your selection tool, and just like that, you've drawn a heart. Now let's go over how you can draw this waving flag icon. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I'll click and drag on the canvas to draw a rectangle. And I want to make sure that I have the edges rounded as I did for the previous object that we created. And then I'm going to draw another rectangle right about here and bring it out about that far. And I want to get rid of the rounded edges here, so I'll come up here and click on this button in the toolbar. I'll grab my selection tool, move this over about here, and use this scaling handle right here to size the rectangle appropriately, about where it needs to be relative to the pole. And I'll place this right about here. We want a little bit of space to be between the pole and the flag. Once that's done, let's create an object to place on top of the flag. For my example here, I just used a star, so I will use that for this demonstration as well. But you can use whatever you'd like. I'm going to grab my stars and polygons tool. I'm going to choose the star option. I want 5 corners, and I want the spoke ratio to be 0.375. And the rounded and randomized both set to 0. And then I can click and drag on my canvas to draw a star. I'll hold Control and Shift and bring my cursor straight up like that. And then I'll grab my selection tool. I'll place this in the center of the rectangle. To scale it down, I'm holding Control and Shift and clicking and dragging the handle. And to place this in the center of the rectangle, I'll hold Shift and click on the rectangle so that I have both objects selected, and I will open up my Align and Distribute menu by going to Object and selecting Align and Distribute. I want to make sure I have Last Selected chosen from this dropdown, and I will center it vertically and horizontally. And then I will go to Path and select Difference. And it's going to subtract the star from the rectangle so that it creates a negative space area within it. Now let me just place this over here to readjust it. I want to make these 2 corners of the rectangle rounded. So let me come over here to my nodes tool. I'll click on this icon up here that says Add Corners Live Path Effect. And I'll click on this node to select it and then hold Shift and click on this node to select it. With those 2 nodes selected, you can grab these white knots right here and click and drag them to round the corners of the selected nodes. Now I'm going to bring that down a little more so it's not too rounded. Right about there looks good. And once you're done with that, you can click on this square icon up here to convert them to a path. And that finalizes the effect. Now I'm going to give the flag a waving effect. So to do that, let me grab my selection tool. I'm going to open up the Path Effects menu by going to Path and selecting Path Effects. And from this drop down over here, I'm looking for Envelope Deformation. I'm going to select that. And I want to uncheck this box right here that says Enable Left and Right Paths. And I'm going to select Top Bend Path right here. And I'm going to grab this top edge and click and drag it up like that. And then I'll click on this node over here and I'll take this handle and bring this down like that. So we want a little bit of a contour going on the top edge of the flag. Don't worry about what's happening on the left and right and down here. That's going to come together once we finish making all of these adjustments. So I'm just going to adjust this accordingly. And then I want to do the same thing with the bottom edge. So I'll come over here and select bottom path. And I'll do the same thing. I'll take this line and I'll bring this one up and I'll bring this one down so that the contours are consistent on the top and the bottom. And that looks good right there. And once you're finished, you can finalize this by going to Path and selecting Object to Path. And just like that, you've created a waving flag icon. Now we'll go over how to create this wine glass shape. So I'm going to grab my circles and ellipses tool, and I'll click and drag on the canvas to draw an elongated ellipse like that. And I'll make this black, and I'm going to open up my fill and stroke menu by double-clicking the color stripe down here next to the fill label. And I'll bring the opacity of this down roughly in half. Now I want to make a duplicate copy of this. So let me go to my selection tool. I'll right click this and go to duplicate. And I'll hold my shift key and I'll grab this top arrow up here and click and drag to scale this in. And as long as you're holding shift, it'll scale inward from the top and bottom like that. And we want to make this about that height, right about there. And now I'm going to right click this and go to duplicate. I'll hold Control and bring this all the way down here. And I'll make this a little smaller by holding Control and taking this top arrow and scaling that down a little bit. And then I'm going to convert this to a path by going to Path and selecting Object to Path. I'll grab the Nodes tool and I'll take this node right here and click on it to select it and then hold Control and click and drag it up about that far. And the same thing with this node. I'll select this node and I'll click and drag this up just a tiny bit though, not much, maybe about that far. And this is going to be the base of the wine glass. So now I'm going to grab the rectangle tool and I'm going to click and drag to draw a rectangle going between the two objects here to represent the stem of the wine glass. And I will make these corners sharp by clicking on this button. And I'll scale this down a little bit. I'm going to hold my shift key and use this handle right here to scale that down. And I want to make sure I have everything here centered. So let me zoom out. Let me select everything. I'm going to come over here to my Align and Distribute menu and make sure I have everything centered on the vertical axis. And now I can come over here into the Shape Builder tool and I can draw a line through these areas to draw the shape that I'm trying to create. And if I go back to the Selection tool, now all we have to do is round these corners in here. So let me grab the Nodes tool and click on the object. I'm going to select these 4 nodes right here. I'll click on this button up here to add corners. Let me select them again. And I'll take this handle and bring this in, or this little round white knot and bring that in a little bit, just to give a little bit of a rounded transition between the stem and the other parts of the glass. And now we can go back to the Select tool and zoom out. And now we can go to our Fill and Stroke menu, bring the opacity back up to 100%, and there is our wine glass. Next, we'll go over how to create this shopping cart icon. So I'll come back into Inkscape. I'm going to grab my Bezier pen, which is located over here in the toolbar, or you can access it by pressing the letter B on your keyboard. And up here in the Tool Settings menu, I want to choose this option right here that says Create a Sequence of Straight Line Segments. And I want to click once on the canvas to create a point, and then hold the Control key and bring the line straight across about that far, and then click again to create another point. And then I'm going to bring the line down about this far, but I'm going to hold the Control key so that it locks it onto a 75-degree angle. And if you look in the status bar at the bottom of the screen, it'll show you which angle you currently have the line going at. So if I move it around, you can see this angle changes. I want the angle to be 75 degrees, so I'll move it about that far. And again, while I'm holding Control, click to add a point, and then bring this line straight across about that far like that, and then press the Enter key to close the path. Now we'll come over here to the Stroke Style tab under the Fill and Stroke tab, and I want to hold up on this plus icon to make this stroke thicker or give it a heavier weight. And I want it to have rounded caps as well, so I'll click on this Rounded Caps button. And I want it to have rounded corners as well, or a rounded join, so I'll select that option as well. And now I'm going to grab the Rectangle tool. Let me press the Escape key to deselect everything there. And I'll click and drag to draw a rectangle going over the object like this. And I'll convert that to a path by going to Path and selecting Object to Path. And I'll grab the nodes tool and I'll take this node and bring this down and over like that. We want the top edge and the right edge going straight, like a 90-degree angle. And then down here, this bottom edge dips down. And you can resize this as needed. So I'm going to resize this. I'm going to scale this down. Just make sure to hold the control key while you scale it down to preserve the aspect ratio. And I noticed that this part of the cart down here sticks out a little too far. So I'll grab my nodes tool and I'll just bring that node in a little bit. And I'll hold control while I'm doing that so it locks it onto the horizontal axis. Now I'll select the basket of the cart and I'm going to apply the corners live path effect as well. Select each of these nodes by clicking on both of them or holding shift and clicking on both of them. And then grab the white knot and bring that in like that, just to give them rounded corners like that. Now I'm going to add some wheels to the cart. So let me grab the circles and ellipses tool. I'll click and drag. I'll hold the control key and click and drag to draw a perfectly round circle like that. Grab the selection tool, place it right under the cart. Duplicate it by right-clicking it and going to duplicate. And then hold your control key and click and drag this straight across like that. And now what I'll do is, for one final step, I'll click on this part of the cart, go back to the nodes tool, add the corners live path effect, and then click on this node right here and just make this rounded using that knot. There we go. Once you're finished, you can click the square icon to convert this to a path. And then you're going to want to convert the stroke to a path as well. So we'll go to path and select stroke to path. And we can select everything now and go to path, union, and now we have a shopping cart icon. Now let's go over how to create this sword icon. I'm going to grab the circles and ellipses tool, and I'll hold my control key and click and drag to draw a perfectly round circle. I'll grab my selection tool, move it towards the bottom of the page, click off of the graphic to deselect it, and then I'll grab my rectangle tool and I'll click and drag a rectangle going through the circle about that wide. And then I want to grab my selection tool, select both of these, go to the Align and Distribute menu and center them up vertically. Click off of it to deselect everything. And I want to select just the rectangle here and hold my shift key and use this right arrow to scale this down or up a little bit, depending on how big or small your rectangle is. The idea is I'm paying attention to down here where the circle meets. I want some of the circles sticking out from that rectangle there. If I make it too big, it's not quite obvious that there's a circle there. But if I make it smaller, it looks a little out of place or too big. So I want to find a happy medium, which I think is right about there. And then once that's done, I will bring this up a little more. And I'm going to convert this to a path by going to Path and selecting Object to Path. And then I'll grab my nodes tool and I want to select these two nodes up top over here. And I want to enable this setting up in here in the tool settings menu that says Show Transformation Handle. So I'll click on that to enable it. And then I want to hold Control and Shift and grab this arrow right here and scale this out like that so that we make the top of this wider than the bottom. Now we can disable that setting. With these two nodes still selected, we can come up here and select this button that says Insert New Nodes into Selected Segments. And then click on just that new node right there, and then hold your control key and click and drag it up like that to create the point of the sword. So I'll bring it up about that far. And now we'll create the handle of the sword. So I'll go back to my rectangle tool. I'll click and drag to draw a rectangle about that size. Let me grab my selection tool and reposition this. I want to make sure everything here is centered, so I'll select everything, center it up vertically, and select just this object right here, and I'm going to convert this to a path. I'll go to Path, Object to Path. I'll go to my Nodes tool and select these two nodes. No, I'm sorry, I'll add the Corners Live Path effect first, and then I will select these two nodes and bring these handles in like this so that we have rounded edges. Then we can convert that to a path by clicking the square icon. And now I want to create a little bit of separation between the handle and the sword or the blade of the sword, kind of like how I did over here. You can see that separation there. So to do that, let me just take this object, right click it, go to duplicate, make it white, and bring this up like that. Just click and drag this handle up, and then click this button that says lower selection one step to lower it beneath the black object, and then you can just take this handle and make this as big or as small as you'd like it to be. It may help to zoom out and see exactly how it looks in comparison to the rest of the objects. And once you're happy with the size, just hold Shift and click on the blade and go to Path, Difference. And then you could select everything and go to Path, Union, and now you have created a sword icon. And for the final part of this tutorial, I will demonstrate how to create this book icon. So to do this, I'm going to grab my Stars and Polygons tool. I want to come up here to the toolbar and choose the polygon setting. I want 6 corners and rounded and randomized both set to 0. And then I'm going to hold Control and Shift on my keyboard and click and drag up in an upward motion with my cursor so that I create a hexagon where the corners are going up and down vertically like that. Let me grab my selection tool and put this towards the center of the page. Now I'm going to convert this to a path by going to Path and selecting Object to Path. And I'll go to my Nodes tool and I want to select these nodes down here. These 3 nodes down here on the bottom. Hold your Control key and click and drag them up about that far. Now I'm going to grab my selection tool, click on the object to get the rotation handles, and hold your Control key and grab this corner handle and rotate it left 4 steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you do that, you should see these left edges are flat against the bounding box of the object selection. Now I'll grab my Nodes tool, select these 3 nodes up here, hold my Control key and click and drag these up like that. Go back to my selection tool, click on the object again to get the rotation handles, and now I'm going to hold Control and rotate it 4 steps clockwise, so in the other direction now. So this time I will go to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, we're holding Control the whole time we do this to lock it into 15-degree increments like that. And once that's done, let's right-click the object and go to Duplicate. And I want to make this a different color just so I can differentiate it. I'm going to make this green. And then I'll right-click this and duplicate it again. And I'll make this one a different color as well. So I'll make this one red. And I will turn on snapping by clicking this magnet icon up here in the top right corner of the screen. And I want to take this object and just snap the corners there, right about there like that, so that the bottom area, this green, kind of looks like a green check mark. And once that's done, hold your Shift key and click on the green object so that you have both of these objects selected here, and go to Path and select Difference. Now I'm going to use the Offset Path Effects. So let me come over here to my Path Effects menu. If you don't have a Path Effects menu, just go to Path and select Path Effects. And the path effect I'm looking for is offset. So I'm going to use this search box right here and type OFF. And there it is right there, offset. I'll grab my Nodes tool and I will make sure, first of all, make sure you have these options enabled down here. We want the join set to miter. Units, this is not really important, so you can ignore that. Offset 0 and miter limit 4. And then use these settings as well. And once that's set, I will grab this red circle and click and drag this down like that. About that far. And once that's done, you can go to Path, Object to Path to finalize that. And now we can grab our selection tool, select both of these objects, click on it to get the rotation handle, and hold your Control key and rotate it to the right 1, 2 steps like that. Now you can click off of it to deselect everything. Take just this green object, grab your Nodes tool, and take these 2 nodes right here and hold your Control key and click and drag them out like that. We want this to extend beyond that black shape. And now we can go back to our selection tool, select everything. Let me turn off the snapping now by clicking this magnet icon again. And now I can click on the object to get the rotation handles, and now I'm going to hold Control and rotate it to the left 2 steps. So 1, 2. And now I will go to Path, Difference. And that right there is the effect we're looking for. So now I have to make the corners of these a little rounded because as of right now, they're a little too square. So to do that, I'm going to grab my Nodes tool, click on the book to select it, add the corners live path effect, and I'm going to select these 4 nodes over here on the left, and I will grab one of these handles, one of these white knots, and scale that in like that just to make these corners rounded. And then I'll come over here and do the same thing. I want to select these 3 nodes and give them a little bit of a rounded edge as well. And then I'll come over here and do the same thing. Select these nodes on the right-hand side and scale them down. It's good to scale each of these segments individually because the amount that you want to round them is going to be different for each side. So you get a better result doing it this way. And I'll come up here and use this one as well. So I'll click on that one, and this should be the last one right here. I'll round that off a little bit. And there we go. I'm going to click on the square button up here to convert it to a path. Okay, so there we go. There's the book icon. Now, one final part of the book icon, if you notice here, I put a little bit of a bookmark down there just to emphasize that it's a book. It makes it look more like a book when you do that. So to create that bookmark, I'm just going to grab my rectangle tool, and I'll click and drag to draw a rectangle over this portion of the object. I'm going to grab my selection tool, click on it again to get the rotation handles. But instead of rotating, we're going to shear. We're going to use the icon over here on the right-hand side and hold the Option key, or the Alt key if you're on Windows, and just bring this down 2 steps so that the edges match in direction like that. And we could bring this right about there. And I'm going to scale that down a little bit. Let me try that again. And if you need to make this bottom longer or shorter, I'm placing it so that the top edge goes halfway through the book's pages here. And I want this to be a little outside of the bottom. So let me grab the nodes tool and let me convert this to a path. I'll go to path, object to path. And now I could take those nodes and hold control and move them up like that. And I can add new nodes in there as well. With those 2 nodes selected, I can click on this button over here that says add new nodes and just select this node right here and move that up. And now I want to create a little bit of an offset between the book and the bookmark. So let me make this black. And let me right click this and go to duplicate. I'll make the duplicate copy white. And I'll hold Control and Shift and scale it up. And I want to lower it beneath the black object. So I'll click on the lower selection 1 step. And then I can just scale this up or down depending on how much I want the offset to be. And again, I'm holding Control and Shift while I do this to scale it from the center. And then once you're happy with how it looks, hold Shift and click on the book and go to Path, Difference. And now we can select both objects and go to Path, Union. And we have created our book icon. So that should do it for today's tutorial. We have created all 6 of these icons using nothing but simple shapes in Inkscape. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching. Join the Logos by Nick mailing list and get over 200 free design templates, including logos, avatars, textures, infographics, and more. As a member, you'll receive news, updates, and tips about your favorite design apps. Just use the link below to subscribe for free and download your templates. As always, thanks for watching.